Hey, what's up, guys? I am Joe from Workbench, and this week we're going to kick it old school with some Legos. A couple of weeks back, Victoria Nece, the lovely project manager for After Effects, posted this really cool image. And as you can see down here, I thought that would be a cool tutorial, and as you can see, she thought it was cool. So let's make something like this. That was fast. Alright, so this is a pretty simple setup, so I'm going to show you how it works. First, we have a pre-comp, and it has a couple images in it. And then we have our main comp with our Lego-ized stuff. Okay, so first things first, I've got this controller which controls a bunch of things, hence the name controller. All right, so then we have our base, which is just our pre-comp. So let's just solo that. You can see to this I have CC ball action applied, and this grid spacing is just tied to this slider on this null. See? 11, 11. I have the ball size set up to 88. You can kind of do this to taste. Obviously, we want it to be pretty squarish. All right, so then on top of that, we have our pegs. I'm sure there's some Lego term for that, but I don't know what it is. All right, and to this, we have a couple of things applied, and the first one is ball action, which has the same grid spacing, but a smaller ball size. And then on top of that, we have Minimax, so that kind of flattens out these colors. And I have an expression applied to this. So let's open that up. All right, so what I did here is I actually took the slider, and for a given size, I figured out what Minimax setting looked best. There's kind of a range of them that worked, and I kind of picked a number in the middle. So you can see I have this set to maximum, and right now the radius is 6. So what I originally determined was at 19 on this slider up here, 10 was the proper setting. So you can see I just pick whipped that slider up there, and I took the original value for that slider, which was 19, and divided it by the setting I had in Minimax. So 19 divided by 10 was 1.9. So that's kind of the ratio that we need to keep. So now to get this number, what we're going to do is take that grid spacing and divide it by 1.9. If that doesn't make too much sense to you, don't worry about it too much because this is going to be a project file that you can download. All right, so that's it for Minimax. Let's close that up. Close this guy up. The next thing we have is exposure, and that's just set to brighten it up just a little bit. You can change that to taste. All right, so let's unsolo this. Close that up. You can see we're missing a very important piece, and that is the radial shadow. That's what separates these from the base color. With that off, you can kind of see it because they're a little bit brighter, but that really sells it. What's kind of neat about this is that our controller null here is actually the position for our light source. So I just pick whipped its position. And then our opacity is actually also the opacity of this null. So you can control a lot of stuff just from this null. So if I move this around, you can see that the shadows will change. So there's one other thing I added to this that's kind of interesting, and that's a bevel alpha. And that's just on there if you want to give the edges of these just a little bit of a highlight. So assuming the light is coming from where this null is, we're going to have a white spot on here because it's catching the edge of that, and a dark spot on the other side. So if we open that up, you can see I have an expression on the light angle. And if we open this up over here, and go up here, click on our light angle, let's open up Expressionist. We'll grab that into there, and then you can see we're grabbing in the controller's position, and then we're setting an X origin, which is just this comp dot width divided by 2, and a Y origin, which is just this comp dot height divided by 2. We're calculating the offset to those. So X offset is equal to the control position 0, which is the X value, minus X origin, and Y offset is equal to control position 1, which is the Y value, minus Y origin. So we're adding an angle offset to this to get this to go in the direction that we want. So what happens is at a certain point when we cross the middle here of the comp, our calculation switches. So instead of bothering to subtract differently or whatever, all I did was change the offset. So we have if the control position of 0, which is the X value, is greater than the X origin, which is the center, our offset is going to be 270, otherwise our angle offset will be 90. And since we need this value in degrees, but our math is going to be in radians, we have radians to degrees, open parentheses around that, math.a tangent, that's arctangent, which is like the inverse of tangent. And then we're going to do y offset, because as we always talk about with our SOHCAHTOA that I keep harping on, we need the opposite value over the adjacent, and in this case we're trying to calculate an angle going this direction. So our opposite will be the y values, and our adjacent values will be the x values. So we're going to take y offset, divide that by x offset, and then close all those parentheses up, and then just add our angle offset. And that's probably the most complicated thing in all of this. So let's close that up. We have one more interesting thing, and that's in our grid here. We have our anchor set to 0, 0, so it starts in the corner because ball action starts in the corner as well. And I don't know how this works out, and I don't know if it's maybe just only for 1920 by 1080 comps, but it turns out that to use this width slider, because width is the actual width in pixels that these are going to be, but the ball action effect uses grid spacing, which who knows what value that actually is in. I don't know why this works, as I said, but it turns out if you add 1 to that grid spacing, so this would be 12, and you multiply it by 2, you get the value that this width needs to be, which here is 24. So that's it for the setup. And as you can see, I have a couple of pre-made values up in here. We have different slider values and positions. So this is with 11 grid spacing. Then we go up to 19 so that our blocks are bigger. I'm going to turn this bevel off. It works in some situations, but I don't think we need it here. And then you can even get more complex and go back a little smaller with 11. It's not the fastest to scrub through this, but you can do that if you want to. So you can even animate this if you felt like it. But what I'll usually do is just click on it and hit the up and down arrows until I get to a spot where I like it. Seems like every 2 or 3 changes, you can actually get one that fits your full comp. So there you go, a little bit more detail at 9. One thing to note, say you want to do something like this, it's letterboxed. Make sure that you have a solid or a shape back there, because otherwise the ball action on the edges will round out. That's pretty much the only caveat you need, and that's pretty much it. So shout out to Victoria for letting me take a stab at that. She did a couple of things differently, but that just goes to show you that there's a lot of ways to get to the effect that you want. Alright, if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments down below. And if you'd like to help support what we do, check out patreon.com/workbench. Make sure you check out the blog at workbench.tv. And as always, I am Joe, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.